afternoon. Welcome to the Community Development and Transportation Committee meeting for February 27, 2024. The elected body present, Mayor Kurt Wilson, Council Member Christine Hall, Council Member
Alan
Sells.
My mom forgets sometimes.
Council Member Alan Sells, Council Member David Johnson, Council Member Sarah Beeson, Council Member G. Lee Hills, Council Member William Morthland. I'm Randy Knight, the City Administrator, along with David Davidson, City Attorney, and Michelle Miller, Executive Assistant to the Council. Purpose of committee meetings are for city departments to provide and convey information to Mayor and City Council and discuss items listed on the published agenda as upcoming. And by ordinance, the committee does consist of the mayor, members of City Council, and City Administrator. And the ordinance does mandate the City Administrator serve as chair of committee meetings. And this is a public meeting, not a public hearing. And therefore, while we certainly welcome members of the public to attend and to view the committee proceedings, we certainly do not take questions or comments unless specifically authorized by mayor and council. Public comments or questions are received on the second and fourth Monday of each month in the city council chambers at our regular city council meetings, and on the fifth Monday in open forum. We do encourage residents to engage our online platforms and to, if you have any questions or need information, please provide those to the staff and team talent of the city. If you have any service requests, we encourage you to use the Roswell app and service web portal, as well as access Roswell 365 for a calendar of events. The first item on the agenda for the evening is the approval of the minutes for the Community Development and Transportation Committee meeting of January 23rd, 2024. Entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Hills, second by Councilmember Morthland. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Then item 2, as listed on the agenda under community development, consideration of the replacement of 4 retaining walls at Champions Green apartment complex required per UDC section 10.5, retaining walls. Ms. Jackie Dybel.
Good evening. As stated, this is a replacement of 4 retaining walls at the Champions Green apartment complex. Per UDC section 10.5 of the code, all new or replaced walls that are greater than 6 feet must be approved by the mayor and council. So they first come committee, and once he moves to forward them on to council, they would be on an agenda at the council. So what we're here tonight for is an agenda vote to be moved to on council agenda. This is just an aerial view of the property. These are the 4 walls. So they have 4 walls that they're hoping to replace. And if you go back here, I'll try to do this the best way I can to kind of give you an aerial view. You have 1 wall down here off of Belmont Drive. 1 wall is over here. You've got wall number 3 back behind this building, and one of the walls here in this parking lot area on Belmont Drive. As stated here, these are the 4 walls that they're looking to replace. Pictures of the walls that are existing here. This is wall number 1, wall number 2, as you can see down at the bottom, wall 3, and then wall 4. This is an existing wall. I spoke to the construction project manager on Friday. This is an existing wall in the complex. This is what they want it to look like. So they already have these in place in a lot of different locations. So they just want to replace the walls with this type of structure. And then wall number 1 is 11 feet, 2 is 10, 3 is 7, and 4 is 8. Due to the fact that they're taller than 6, they have to come to committee and they have to go to council for approval. Staff recommends approval to be placed on council agenda.
Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilmember Sells, I am just going to interpret that from your response, this is exactly why you decided to run for council, so that you could weigh in on these kind of momentous decision-making.
I was surprised it was over a foot. Yeah, I thought it was over a foot.
Yeah, yes.
Councilmember Hall.
So, Jackie, you may be able to add to this. It was before I was on council. The reason I believe that this is in the UDC is because of the Great Wall of Roswell that's on Coleman and Williams.
That's correct. That is the reason why retaining walls now, anything 6 feet or above, unless they're in a single-family home property, then they come to council for approval, whether they're new or replaced.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions, comments? Councilmember Morthland.
So when you say replace, we're not increasing, we're just going back at the same exact.
Yes, they're looking to go exactly the same height they have now.
Councilmember Beeson.
Confirming on wall number 1, there's currently a fence above, which is the 11-foot wall. I assume there would be a fence above the 11-foot wall during the replacement?
Yes.
Thank you, good.
Further comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion. A motion by Councilmember Beeson, second by Councilmember Morthland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll move toward transportation. Excuse me. Item number 3, as listed on the agenda, under transportation, consideration to authorize the mayor or city administrator to sign an agreement with Stone Pine LLC to permit the developer to do concrete work within the right-of-way. Mr. Littlefield.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Maple Street agreement is with Stone Pine LLC. A little bit of background. There's a former developer that left portions of Maple Street in substandard conditions. They didn't have the final inch of asphalt in there. The curb and gutter or header curb was not completed. They pulled out. Stone Pine LLC bought the 2 properties on that extension, and this was actually an agreement that the city tried to enter into with the homeowners back before I got here, I guess about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago.
January 2022.
Okay. The homeowners didn't partake in the agreement, and so it fizzled out. We realized we needed to do something about Maple Street. In the meantime, the developer who bought those parcels needs to complete the street, complete the work to get the COs for those 2 parcels. So he asked if we would be interested in basically partnering in the same type of agreement that we had prior. And that's what this reflects. The Maple Street extension for his work is approximately $25,000. The city's resurfacing is approximately $34,000. Now keep in mind, we're doing all of Maple Street. His work will be consistent to just from Elm to the end of pavement on Maple Street and then going up on the extension. It is causing the city problems due to the lack of the 1.5 inches of asphalt. There's drainage structure out there that water really can't get into unless it's over 1.5 inches deep, so it's causing problems with our subgrade. And you can see the pictures here. Water is just seeping in there, and we're gonna end up going in there and putting some heavy patches in. And you can see header curb right there. That's the example of what the header curb will look like that he's putting in front of the parcels going down Maple Street, going down this section here, all the way on both sides of the street, all the way to the Pleasant Hills extension or Elm Street, whichever you want to call it. And then that curb there is just from our Oxbow project that will be tied into. There's no additional funding required. It's in the city's resurfacing list, and we're not doing it just for the development. The PCI rating on that section of Maple Street is a 19 out of a 100, so it's definitely needed. Funding for resurfacing is available at $1.99 million, or $2 million in the FY24 citywide road resurfacing and reconstruction budget. There's a copy of the agreement in your packets. And basically, we won't wait for the contractor or the developer. We will schedule our resurfacing as needed by our contractor, and he will not get COs until all work is completed, his work and the city's work. So staff's recommendation is to approve if it's the desire of the mayor and council.
All right, thank you, sir. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michelle, can you go back 2 slides? Or Dave, I'm sorry. One more, I apologize. One more. One more. There we go. So Jeff, just to be clear, through the current construct of discussions, the developer is contributing $25,000 to this project.
That's the approximate value of the work that we estimated.
And so I just want to point that out. So thanks to really the leadership of Councilmember Lee Hills, I know it's only $25,000, but thanks to Lee Hills and thanks to you guys' great work, you saved the city $25,000 by being a little patient. So great job.
Thank you, sir. Further questions or comments? Councilmember Morthland.
See the one slide before, one slide after. Let's try again. That strip of green to the right.
To the right.
Who owns that property? Because that used to be a.
He actually owns 2 other lots that are in front here. There will be actually a continuous sidewalk on that side of the street because he worked with the property owner between his 2 parcels to work out a deal where he could have a continuous sidewalk. So, but he owns 2 of those parcels. I don't know who the other owner is.
But that's going to be sidewalk.
There'll be when his houses are completed and before he gets his COs, he'll have all that work.
All the way to Oxbow.
All the way to the Pleasant Hills extension, Elm Street.
Sorry.
Yes, the
Sorry.
same
Yeah,
Oxbow
my bad.
project.
Yeah, Pleasant Hill extension.
Even over the empty lot, the one that he doesn't own.
Yes, he's doing both sides of the street up to Elm Street. So he wouldn't have ever had to have touched the other side of the street because he doesn't front that, but he is doing that as well. And then we're capping it, we're doing the patching, and then we're placing the asphalt.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Just to follow up on the fire truck turnaround area and the subgrade and the problems there, have that been corrected, or is this going to correct all of that?
This is gonna correct all of that. We'll go in with patching, and then we'll put the final 1.5 inches of asphalt in that section.
Mayor Wilson.
Sure, yeah, just to follow up Christine's question, Jeff. So the hammerhead, but I think Christine's kind of asking about that as well. That hammerhead's not getting corrected.
Corrected if you mean putting 1.5 inches of asphalt and making sure that that is that's going to be done.
Right, but it's still going to be kind of an orphan hammerhead. at the end of the
It'll
day.
be a turnaround, I guess, for fire trucks.
Turnaround for fire is what
Yes,
it
sir.
technically is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is not what we would call optimal design.
It's not gonna be redesigned.
That's right.
No, sir.
But it's not optimal design. This is not how, if we were to do this again, it wouldn't look like this.
Hope not.
Councilmember Morthland.
Last question, the trail right there on the left, that is not part of any of this discussion, correct?
Not working on the trail.
Not working on that asphalt trail right there. That's City of Roswell Recreation and Parks property, correct?
Yes.
Councilmember Hall.
Just on that trail, and all the erosion has been corrected on that, or is that still being addressed on that trail? There was a lot of erosion falling off.
Yes, that's been completed. Yep. Yeah,
Got a
thumbs up.
thumbs up from the EPW director as well. Okay, thank you.
I can
Councilmember Morthland.
talk about that for a minute. So when we first got going on this project back January of 2022, Kurt, is that right? Yeah.
It was January 2022.
We walked all of this and noticed all the problems, not just what we're talking about right here with this project, but also the trail connection right there, and also the trail that goes up the hill to the right that goes to the playground area. So the trail itself is the City of Roswell's responsibility, whereas this asphalt project that we're working on right now is something completely different. On the right-hand side, we've worked on that, I can't remember if it's concrete or if it's asphalt, it's probably asphalt. We've worked on that connection going up the hill. We're also working on plans to beautify the area. Director Malone is deep in that process right now. And then the asphalt trail that goes down the side of the hill, that was all being washed away with the erosion that was coming from some of these sub-basin pieces and the water not catching and going down into the pipe. It was seeping down into the sub-base of that basin. A lot of that's being corrected. But to answer the question, is the erosion under control? It's a lot better. I can't say that it's 100%, but it is a lot better. And then continue to go down that hill. Once you start coming up, then you'll see on the back side, back left side is where Doc's Cafe is located.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Johnson, second by Councilmember Northland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, passes unanimously, thank you. Item number 4, consideration to award a contract to Atlas Technical Consultants LLC for Roswell Safe Streets and Roads for All citywide safety action plan. Mr. Littlefield.
Dave Cox.
All right, Mr. Cox.
Good evening. This is a day we've been waiting for several months now to award the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. This was a grant we got earlier last year, from $200,000 from USDOT to do a citywide study across all of Roswell, in which the North Fulton CID, now called True North, is providing the local match. This is not costing the city of Roswell anything. We've got a federal grant, and our partners at the CID are paying the freight on this. The safety action plan is actually a 2-step process. We have to do the action plan first, per USDOT guidelines, to look at a variety of safety strategies and look at project identification. These are likely going to be smaller scale projects, looking at bike ped safety, looking at hot spots for crash analysis, and looking at traffic calming, as well as some other things like poor lighting in areas or intersections that don't have proper lighting for pedestrians and bicyclists. The main thing that you're doing the study for is once you're complete, you can go to phase 2 and apply for capital funds for federal projects, such as median islands or pedestrian signals. We have a bunch of ideas that were identified previously in the master plan that the council approved late last year. So we're looking to jumpstart that with federal funding as early as 2025. Just to recap the RFQ process, we sought qualifications from firms in the marketplace. We got about 10 consulting firms submitted proposals. The evaluation committee reviewed them and did interviews on a short list of 3 of them, and we recommended that Atlas Technical Consultants be selected based on the score of the committee. And we would move forward with this upon council approval and do a notice to proceed and authorize the contract after it's approved by the mayor and council, likely in March. Once that authorization has been provided, we anticipate the study will take no more than 12 months to complete, and then it would line up with the application cycle for 2025 for federal funds on capital projects. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Mayor Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations, Jeff and Dave. Thanks for your hard work on this. Obviously, a shout out to True North for having $50,000 to match the $250,000, which is a big deal. As you said, this is a grant along with True North's help, which will cost the city $0 to implement. Probably know what my question is. Timing. So we let this in October, right? I think we brought it in November. It's February the 20th. Why are we talking about this today?
We just concluded the procurement 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. Went through the interviews.
We had the interviews in January,
Scoring, did the interviews.
and it was in the marketplace for 30 days, which
Yeah.
was primarily over the holidays.
I see that. And then you let it actually on November the 7th, correct? So October it got let. The 7th, you closed the award. And then from the 7th to January 3rd, I don't know what that process was. I'm just looking at the contractual nature of this.
Staff has to score the 10, get a short list together, and then from the short list, then we do a round of interviews with the shortlisted contractors.
Sorry, I'm doing a bad job of asking questions.
We have to review all their submittals, and they're about an inch thick, each of them. There's 10 of them. We have to rate them on their technical abilities and staffing. That takes a good bit of time.
So we read through, make notes, put it into our bonfire, I think it's called bonfire. And then each person in the committee presents a score, and then the top 3 or 4, whichever you decide, is selected to go through a round of interviews. You go through a round of interviews, take notes, go back to bonfire, and then you evaluate based on each committee person's score, and then it comes back the highest of the average score.
So it takes a long time.
Is there
Well,
anything?
reading the packets took
Yeah.
quite a while, actually, because there's a lot of intricate details that you pick up on.
Right.
How do you feel explaining that process here in public, from an efficacy perspective? Just like real world, I mean, honestly, I'm not asking a complicated question here.
The federal process that we follow?
No, I'm not talking about the federal process. I'm saying, do you think that is there a way for us to find some speed of execution in some of this?
There could be, I don't know where the speed would come from.
You know,
Not with this particular one. I mean, literally
is
reading.
it because of the
10,
federal intent on it?
I think so, but then just reading the volume of information that came in from the 10 consultants.
So the $250,000 grant is really not free. It's pretty expensive, it sounds like, in terms of the amount of time it took staff to actually move forward and execute on this.
And Councilmember Hills, okay, all right. Councilmember Beeson.
I'm very familiar with these types of proposals because I do them quite often, specifically this one, which is why I'll be abstaining later, because it is very relevant to the field that I work in. It's also not easy on the consultant side to put together these proposals. If 30 days is a typical turnaround for most municipalities, but there are some people who will give you 2 weeks and it's laughable. The amount of depth of content that goes into this, they're not just looking at something that says like, let me see your 3 references and your cost estimates. They're looking at, and I don't know with this one if you did cost or bid tab separate for cost, and sometimes those are done separately because they'll package them separately. Looking through your RFP here, you had qualifications, you had back work, you had references, you had resumes. You have to describe in detail the technical approach of how you're going to go after this project, especially for equity. There is a lot of depth that goes into the consultant or the contractor side that you want to make sure on the municipal side that you're doing your due diligence. Otherwise, you'll have Joe Schmo out there that's like, yeah, I could probably do that, and they've never done it once before in their entire life. With this, it's doing your due diligence on your end to ask the right questions, which, looking at the RFP, I feel like we are. This is pretty standard questions. But it's also, I understand your concern with the lift when we're getting theoretically free money, but it's not free because it's time out of your day, it's time out of your day, and it's time out of whoever's day is on this committee to assess it. But frankly, from my perspective, it's also, you're decreasing the risk on the city side by doing it that way because you're making sure that the contractor can meet their end of the work. That's why on the federal government side, you'll hear all the time of these people who get federal contracts that it's run out of the back of their house and they could not adequately do that work ever because they did not have somebody doing that due diligence on the receiving end. So I hear your concerns in terms of the amount of resources that go into it. I would much rather front load these resources as opposed to later trying to untangle that if we went into a contract with someone who cannot fulfill.
Mayor Wilson.
What's this $250,000 grant for?
It's for an action plan for our Safe Streets for All grant.
That's the
We have to do the action plan if we're going to go after capital funds at a later date.
So the work product from them is the actual report, correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
with a project list.
is there some assumption that they will be a part of the go-forward team, considering the depth of diligence that you did on this? I mean,
They might have some insight when they're going for capital projects, but I don't think there's any thought that they would be part of the second round. I mean, it would be.
It would be a
go through
totally
the
new
same
procurement process.
So each of them spent the amount of time that Council Member Beeson indicated for a proportional chance at a $250,000 grant. So that means that a lot of it has to be boilerplate, seems to me.
There was over a dozen other municipalities in the Atlanta region that went after the same thing we're doing. So I'm sure
So
the
there's rents-
packages were pretty similar. They just put different
Gotcha.
names and stuff on it.
Maybe we should have gotten together and studied them all together.
I think it's, Mr. Chairman, I
Yes,
apologize.
there was,
for you.
yes.
I think it's a very fair question to ask the organization. Whenever we expend time, energy, and money, right, pursuing money doesn't necessarily meet the goals that we're pursuing. Like, you have a gigantic department. Transportation, what's your total budget? It's big, right? Not including all of the projects that you're working on that are even outside of your domain and purview in terms of dollars and responsibility. So my question would be, I think it's easy for any organization, not just a government, right, to sometimes pursue things that they may look like they are in alignment with what you're after, but this question remains, is like that really the best utilization of time, energy, dollars, expenditures? And this may be, not, and whenever I see this kind of lift in time, and I'm looking at $250,000, I'm going, well, there's a lot of people responding to it. As you said, it took a lot of time internally to do due diligence on it. How does it fit into the big picture? Was it worth it? Because we're talking about $250,000 grant that's quote-unquote free. First thing is, it ain't free, right? Because the executive team spent real resources analyzing it. So it definitely is not free. And probably the real place where it's not free is the time, energy, and alignment of strategy in terms of where does this fit into your priorities in terms of the overall organization, like how much time got spent on this? And how did that fit into your overall priorities in terms of what you're responsible for? And I just say sometimes in organizations, those things get lost. Any organization, not just governments. So I think it's fair to question, hey, if I don't have a great answer for this, and I don't have a fantastic response, then maybe it does need some checkup.
Councilmember Sells.
Yes, it is, Councilman. Mr. Knight.
Thank you.
A couple questions. This is a learning experience for me, so I appreciate the mayor's questions and you guys' answers to this. Was this something that we would have undertaken? If we hadn't had this grant, was this something we wanted to do? That's sort of question number one. Question number two would be, when we go for these grants, I assume that's somebody's role in the government, in the city hall to go find these grants. Is there a process of assessing the friction cost for taking the grant? And then the third thing is, what's the ultimate payoff besides the report? Is it the grants that we get? So that's three questions on one.
This particular one, I think it is something that we would have gone after because of the second round, because we want to make sure that we can fund tier one of our transportation master plan. And if some of these projects fall into that and we're able to get federal funds to accomplish that, that would be great. I think your other question,
First one was, yeah, that's a great answer. In other words, this is sort of a fishing expedition to get future grants for things that we actually do want to do. So maybe money well spent from that.
yeah, we do look at probably every grant actually, and we have grant meetings where we do assess the time that it would take to get it, so does it even fit in our timetable? A lot of times it takes a lot of time. A lot of these are matches, so you have to have the money up front. Is it worth, paying for it and then hope you get the money back in a timely manner? So we do look at every one of the ones that we apply for several criteria. I mean, matching, what we're trying to achieve, timeframe, staff, how much time it takes the staff to put this stuff together. So it is looked at, yes, sir.
It may be worth trying to figure out how to estimate the monetization of the cost, the friction cost, as I call it, or is the squeeze worth the juice, I guess is the question, and I think that's what you're asking.
100%, and I'm glad, can I piggyback on Councilmember Sells, and sorry, Jeff, just correct a little bit. I think we've been moving towards this in the last 2 years. I don't think we've consolidated this piece, which is a grant strategy, which Lee has been leading the charge on, which is an aggregate grant strategy. And that every department, right, should be submitting the grants in conjunction with the grants department in alignment with the policy directives of the council, in alignment with the operational direction from the city administrator. Is in the past, I would say, and I don't think this is, I do think it's very easy for organizations, particularly in government, and I don't think we were unique in this, to have grant strategies, to pursue grant money because it's there. And then I think in the last 24 months, there's been a direction to say, just because the money's there doesn't necessarily mean that you pursue it. And I think the other part of that is having a kind of a macro strategic analysis of the grant strategy and having a macro view into all the grants that are being applied for, and having that in conjunction with the strategic alignment of the policy making and the policymakers. And I don't think we've gotten there yet. I know we've been working on it. Yes, Elaine, sorry.
Councilmember Hills?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're exactly right, Mayor, but I will say that working with Strategic Solutions, our consultant for grants, they actually came last summer and interviewed every department and drilled down to what they were looking for based on this mayor and council's vision and mission for the city and for this particular topic, transportation. And in working with them, I get on a call with them every single month, and they're bringing up comments about our different grants that we have opportunities to fulfill those goals within each department. So several of them that have come up, and forgive me, I probably should go run and get my notepad, but there are several that they're saying, as soon as hopefully we get this, this safer streets, Roswell Safe Streets and Roads for All is the foundation. Like, we can't even apply for some of those unless this is already on deck. So it's not just one that we were after, it's been multiple, and some are better fits than others, but it's absolutely, and forgive me for not being in the industry, I couldn't tell you exactly what elements in this is the trigger point for these grants. One might be this trigger point, one might be that one, but this fulfills a lot of different things, not just streets, but also multi-use trails, am I right, and sidewalks. There are multiple different opportunities that are coming down the pike, and this will last for several years. Is that right, Jeff, Director Littlefield? That this will sit tight so we can, over the next couple of rolling years of applications, we'll have opportunities, and this will already be on deck.
So are you saying, Lee, that Jeff and Dave are very happy about this grant and they should be extolling its virtues much stronger than what they're doing tonight? Is that what you're saying?
I think they're happy that the process is complete, and yes, just short of balloons and confetti, I think this will be a great
Okay,
foundation.
so Jeff and
for
Dave,
things.
after last week, why aren't you extolling the virtues of what a big deal this is and saying, like, this one really matters?
No, it does really matter, like, as far,
Smile more.
as
Smile.
far, as far as implementing our traffic calming measures, this could affect some of our traffic calming corridors. If they're identified in this feasibility study, then we could apply for federal funding as opposed to.
So this one's worth the squeeze.
Yeah,
The juice is worth the squeeze, to use Alan's parlance, right? The juice is worth the
We
squeeze.
definitely believe the juice is worth the squeeze
Okay.
with this particular study.
Councilmember Beeson?
I would actually advocate on y'all's behalf in this situation. Based on the enterprise goals that were discussed last week during our retreat, one of the major overarching themes was improvement in safety with traffic. The best way to go about doing that is to be able to analyze those pressure points of where we can begin. Think of this as more of creating a roadmap. That roadmap in this situation, the city would not be paying for. I understand there's some hours and time that you guys having to manage it, having to bid it out. That definitely is, it's not completely free. But in this situation, the local match is still being covered by the CID, North Bolton CID. You have the $200,000 grant process. to Councilmember Hill's point, it opens you up for opportunities to move forward to get more grant money to cover the cost of those improvements. So I think it actually is very clear and it's alignment with our strategic goals overall collectively as an elected body. But that said as well, I think it's also very forward-thinking. I also would hate, frankly, if we have a dozen other cities in the metro Atlanta area who've moved forward and gotten grants on this, and everyone's gonna be asking, where's Roswell at the table? So that's where I'm at.
Councilmember Morthland.
Hopefully this will summarize it, but. And we can, this will be a very quick answer, but I just want to throw it out there. Are there any strings attached to us accepting the local match from the North Fulton CID?
No.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, any further questions or comments?
Question
Mayor Wilson,
for
yes.
Pro Tem Workland. Are you gonna ask a very succinct question on every, because you know we got some projects coming up where we're being invited to get into some of that question. And the problem is, and you're gonna hear Director Littlefield talk about it, like, the reason we don't want federal money is because, one, not only does it dramatically slow us down, it costs us more money, ironically. Sometimes that story's not told when you're talking about getting money, right? So, as long as you remember to answer that question every time, I'm good, brother. Mayor Pro Tem Colombo, indeed.
All right, any further comments? No, any further comments or questions? All right, seeing none, or I'll entertain a motion.
That's where your question comes in.
Is that a motion? Motion by Councilmember Johnson, second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that passes and moves forward. Thank you very much.
Flagging for the record, abstention on that, not because I have any personal financial ties to any of the firms that are involved, but I do work in a, for lack of better word, very incestuous industry. So potential future work with some of the contractors involved. Abstention, not a recusal.
All right, thank you. Duly noted. Item number 5, consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to authorize execution of a project framework agreement and a memorandum of agreement with the Georgia Department of Transportation for the Vickery Creek Trail Connection Project.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and Assistant City Administrator Leatherman is joining us with this one. Vickery Creek Trail, MOA and PFA, a little bit of background on it. The city was awarded $150,000 Federal Lands Access Program, which is the FLAP grant, for a scoping study. Scoping study for proposed Vickery Creek Trail connection from Oxbow Road south towards the Waterfall Trail. The study is to examine trail connections linking the city property to the National Park Service Chattahoochee River National Recreational Area. The Georgia Department of Transportation requires project framework agreement, which PFA, for federal fund reimbursement. Memorandum of agreement needed for preliminary engineering oversight. Staff seeks approval to execute a PFA and MOA with GDOT. The reason why transportation is involved is because the funds are being transferred through GDOT, and so they require LAP certification, which is Local Administrative Project certifications, and our unit typically deals with GDOT, so our staff is certified. The financial impact, preliminary engineering oversight cost not to exceed $10,000. Funding in the amount of $150,000 has been allocated to the project account, but is 100% reimbursable by GDOT. The next steps, if approved, forward to upcoming council.
All right, thank you, sir. Questions? Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Does this trail exist, or do we have a map on where this trail is going to be? Is this a trail that has been in the plan before? It seems like I've heard about it, but
This trail does not exist. There is a gravel road that goes north of the waterfall for good ways, but it's primarily a service access road. Not, I mean, people walk on it, but it's not really a trail. But I can show you on the map what it would propose.
is this part of the gateway? Were there any comments?
No, this is north of the waterfall and the covered bridge.
Yeah, if you could just,
So,
This is access.
So here's the waterfall, here's the parking lot with the trailhead, and there's a trail that comes eastward from here up to the waterfall. The service road continues along the west bank of the creek around the bend, and it's kind of a service road. There's a little access road right here that vehicles can access to get down to the waterfall if needed. The trail does kind of continue. It follows a sewer line. Fulton County has a sewer line that follows Big Creek. And then somewhere in this area, there is I think that's it right there. The sewer line crosses the creek, and there's another little hiking trail along here. And I believe the feasibility would look at having a trail connection over the creek and follow the east bank of the creek around this corner. And then there's another sewer crossing somewhere in this vicinity, and it would link into this parking lot or somewhere in this immediate area. But again, this is just a feasibility study to look at scoping and concept.
So there'd be bridges and people wouldn't be crawling over the sewer pipes.
All right, thank you. Other questions or comments regarding this matter? Mayor Wilson?
Thanks, Richard. How quickly can you get the scoping done and get the project done?
So similar to your last conversation that you just had regarding the federal process, we do have to follow the federal process because of the federal money that's involved in this. So we will have to go out to an RFQ, select the qualified vendors, an independent process. And that's going to take us about what you just saw. So you essentially have the scope of work that went out in November. It takes you a few months to get through the evaluation process, and then you begin. So we're about, with authorization here, once we get the information back from GDOT, you're about 3 months into that evaluation process just for your consultant, and then you can kick the consultant loose, and I would say you're probably 5 to 6 months turnaround time. So you're about 9 months total from start to finish.
For design?
That's just the feasibility. So that's going to give us essentially the estimate associated with what it's going to cost, as well as the timetable for how long it would take to build it. What this also does in the FLAP program, however, is it qualifies us for future federal funding in that same program to be able to build it. So again, similar to what you heard earlier, this is kind of the first step. Once you get through the feasibility component, now you know how much money you're asking for in the FLAP process, and you can go back to the federal program and ask for construction money at that point,
So this trail will be built in 2026, 2027?
if we get the second round of funding. Yes, sir.
All right. Further comments or questions? All right, seeing none, we'll entertain a motion on this item. Motion by Councilmember Johnson. Second by Councilmember Morthland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And then our next item is under the heading of Public Works, item number 6, consideration to increase CIP program management consultant capacity to $2 million per year. Mr. Watson.
Real quick, flagging for recusal. Bye.
All right.
So you got to recuse yourself on this one?
In the interest of precaution, while I do not have a current contract with Jacobs, I worked on contracts with them before. There's a good chance that I could work on contracts with them in the future. So as to not allude to a potential pecuniary interest, I want to make sure that I'm recusing. Y'all are good. I have faith in you.
Last time, go bye.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Watson. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. Good evening, Mayor and Council. In mid-2023, the city awarded the CIP program management contract to Jacobs Engineering. This contract is to support the planning, design, and implementation of the bond projects. When the city issued the contract had a maximum annual capacity of $1 million. Due to upcoming program management needs, as well as other planning and design needs that we're going to have, this will exceed the annual capacity. So to be consistent with other city large program projects like the T-SPOS program, as well as the CIP design, of public safety design contract. Staff recommends increasing this contract ceiling to $2 million per year. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Sells, second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That does conclude the last item on the Community Development and Transportation Committee meeting for February 27, 2024. I'll entertain a motion of adjournment. Motion by Councilmember Morthland, second by Councilmember Hills. All in favor? Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. Have a wonderful evening.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
What happens when water goes away?